Hey YouTube, welcome to the channel, the D20 Woodworking. My name is Jason. Today we are doing a tier ranking list of all the villains currently out for Marvel Champions as of the beginning of 2022. Now recently we did a hero tier list, and I know there was some controversial stuff on there, but it was a lot of fun to do that. It's really fun to kind of go through all of them and see what's popular and what I like and what I dislike and maybe set expectational goals. I figured we do the same exact thing with villains. So we're gonna do this, but put some caveats on here in the beginning right away. First, this is solely my opinion. I'm not doing it by what I think for other people would be the best villain or what the strongest. None of that. I am doing it solely on what I enjoy, right? What I enjoy playing. So this mostly is based off of my enjoyment factor. I'm also basing this off of solo playing the villain because some of these villains actually do better when it's multiplayer, and this will affect a few of them. Um, but it's all based off of solo play. And lastly, it's based off of single fights, so it's not a part of its campaign, right? If the villain is a part of a campaign, it's not the campaign version of that villain, it's the single fight version. So that also kind of changes some things too. We can get a little bit into that, but that's something that we could break down in the future. But anyway, let's head to the game table, or not the game table, the website. And here we go. So I have basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiers. S tier is villains I love fighting. I think they're absolutely fantastic. D, I think they're absolutely worthless. I don't want to ever really play with these villains. As before, we'll just do this in alphabetical order. It's the easiest way to do it. So we'll start with Absorbing Man. And usually I bring different screens up there, but we didn't do that this time. Try to keep the video a little shorter. So Absorbing Man, he's generally pretty much the easiest villain in the game. Especially on normal. On expert, it's a little tougher, and he's boring. He's just boring. Really, he's kind of hard to lose against. On expert, it's a little harder to lose against him, but he's not even worth like playing a deck against because his threat threshold is so incredibly high. You don't really have to try that hard to try to keep that down. Usually, there's enough there that you can beat him pretty quick. So, unfortunately, Absorbing Man, not great. Kind of rough to play against. So anyway, he's down there at the bottom. I never really play him anymore. It's really a shame. So next we're gonna start with Collector 1. I'm gonna speed this up. Collector 1 and 2 are both at the bottom. I don't care what anyone says. I don't think they're good scenarios. Collector 2 is at least a little more interesting, but to me, both those scenarios work slightly better in the campaign mode, right? With the story, it makes more sense with what's going on. But I don't know if I've ever really pulled out either of the collectors when I'm looking for a single villain and been like, I want to play against them because I think this is really fun. Justice crushes both of those decks. I mean, it absolutely does. It's not fun. And it's really kind of frustrating scenario. And I had a bad time in the game with it too, especially the first collector with the set piece. I think that the way that's done, I don't really enjoy. I think it's poorly done with the 5 cards for solo that's in the collection, and that his cards can join that collection, which seems silly because he already has his cards. So whatever, I can go on for a while, but I really dislike the Collector 1 and 2. I never really play him. Next up is Crossbones, and Crossbones used to be about a C for me. He's actually moving up to a B. He's pretty enjoyable. I think I haven't gone through all the hood scenarios, but I think there's some things that could work well with Crossbones in there and make him pretty interesting. So I actually like Crossbones. I think he can be a really good challenge, especially when he kind of builds out. It's fun to watch him build out, get stronger and stronger and stronger, and you're trying to catch up and really, take him down. So I think that is, that's a solid spot right there. I think B is a good spot for it. So next up is Drang, and Drang, I'm putting as an A right away. Drang to me is one of the best villains for really just kind of testing out your deck, right? Trying to figure out your deck, what works, what doesn't work. Drang to me on standard and expert is pretty evenly balanced, especially with the timer counter, basically, that every 4 rounds you're getting consequential damage. I think that's a good mechanic. I think it works well for him. So now I gotta be honest, Ebony Maw is right there too, but I'm gonna put Ebony Maw a little bit below. I think Ebony Maw is a little bit easier than Drang. And I think Ebony Maw is fine, but I don't know. I just feel like it's a little bit easier. So I enjoy, again, practicing off of Ebony Maw, but I already really had a practice deck with Drang. So I don't know. I could see Ebony Maw moving up. Next up is one of the Green Goblins. I think it's mutagen formula is this one. We're going to call this one mutagen formula. This one is going to be up here. I really enjoy Green Goblin. Actually, I'm going to put both of them up there. I know risky business is not as enjoyable for most people because it's considered easier, but I like both the Green Goblin scenarios. I think they're really cool. I think they're really thematic. I think they each have their own unique challenges. That's not just kind of copy and paste design, that they're each kind of unique in their own way. Again, I know, I believe it's risky is the one that most people consider much easier, and I'm okay with that because it's nice to just beat up on the Green Goblin versus mutagen formula when I get wrecked the other half of the time. So I'm putting both those scenarios up there. I absolutely love playing them. I'm a sucker for Spider-Man in general, so anything Green Goblin related with Spider-Man is fantastic. Going right along, we have Hela, and I'm gonna be honest, Hela's up there too, probably higher than Green Goblin. And the reason being, Hela just reminds me of a Lord of the Rings scenario. To be completely honest, it's so cool the way that they built her out. Even in a single battle, it's still pretty well done, pretty unique and interesting. But in that campaign, it feels really good. But even a single battle, it's built out well, like that questing feeling, right? Going to this location, have to fight this thing, go to the next location, fight that thing. Like, it's really cool scenario setup that they have for Hela. I really enjoy it. I hope they don't overdo this, but I hope they're in the next expansion or the one after that, there's a scenario too like this. I think it's a really cool thing they're doing. Next up is Kang. Now, Kang for solo, it's somewhere between an A and a B, right? Bottom A, top of B. I don't know which. And the reason being is I enjoy Kang. I enjoy the way Kang plays. My biggest gripe is that one, his game takes really, really long time, and it's obviously not truly meant for solo. Still works well for solo, but it's not really meant for solo. But it just takes a long time. It takes a long time. So I enjoy it, but it feels like I'm playing two games in one. And yeah, there's just something about that. I don't know. And Kang just really hits hard. I don't think I've ever defeated Kang on expert. So I still enjoy Kang, but I don't get mad as often as I should. All right, next up, Klaw. Klaw we're gonna put in the B range. And I like Klaw. I like the mechanic with the drawing two boost cards instead. I think you could do some fun things with them. He was one of those villains that I felt like a lot of people kind of slept on, that a lot of people didn't think much about. They were so focused on Ultron, they didn't realize that Klaw is crazy hard. I mean, just insanely hard villain. So I like Klaw. Sometimes I think he's a little too hard, or on standard, I should say he's a little too easy, and expert's a little too hard. It's kind of a weird balance, but it's all right. So next up, we have Loki. I'm gonna be honest. I'm putting Loki down in the C solely because I haven't played them enough, and I'm not super impressed by him. Like, I like the mechanic of switching out Lokis. I think that's a cool mechanic. I've done it about a little over half a dozen times, and it's kind of wearing out, right? Like, you already know, okay, like for this Loki, I should focus this way. For this one, I should focus this way. You kind of figured it out. I don't know if I put different modular sets in, it'll improve that scenario, or if I just played it too much in a row that I kind of got burnt on it. I don't really know. Again, I'm gonna play more Loki. Put Loki further up. I still enjoy it. I like that the expert version of it, just you add more Lokis. I think that's different. I like different. I like them trying new things. So I like that idea. I don't know. I don't love Loki. Maybe he moves up. Who knows? Next up, we have Nebula. I'm gonna be honest. Nebula was an A, and the more and more I play her, the more she falls down because you see kind of her design weakness. I'm gonna put her at the bottom of B. She's probably gonna fall down to C at some point. The problem with Nebula is when I first played her a couple times, it just seemed like, oh, she's kind of a cascading event, right? Like, as she builds out, she does more and more and more and more, and it works against you more and more and more. Okay. The problem is it's very random. Like, it's not even, it feels like, oh, okay, if this game lasts a certain amount of turns, it's going to get harder and harder. It could get really hard the second round if she draws the right technique cards, right? It's just very random feeling, which isn't bad. I don't mind it. I don't want all my games to feel exactly the same, so that's why she's not ranked super low. But every single time I play her, it seems like she just slips a little bit. So next up is Red Skull. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a huge Red Skull fan. I don't even play him enough. I play him a couple dozen times on solo, and I think his design is really cool. I think it's cool to have that side scheme deck and that attack, and that works with his attack. I think that's a really neat system. I hope they do more with that type of stuff. I really like Red Skull, and I think also for that box, he's a perfect villain. His difficulty is just right, which we'll get into in a second. But his difficulty is just right. Everything about it is just right. I think he's really cool. Really cool villain. And I need to play against him more. Next up, we have Rhino. Rhino's going to be a C, a high C. And the reason being is because he could have 0 threat and scheme out on you in turn 1. Like, it's just incredibly frustrating as a solo player. Rhino just feels slightly unbalanced. Now, props to the designers, first off, because they could have just had Rhino be like an introductory villain and then 2 real villains. No, they made Rhino a real villain. He is tough. If you don't have a character that can really thwart constantly, he's really tough to handle, which kind of limits him a bit with who you can play against him. But yeah, it's just that fact that 7 threat ends the game, and 1 gets added on, and there's a couple different cards that basically do advance, and even in his own deck, that it really messes you up. It really kind of just randomly ends the game, and it makes it not as much fun. A character you don't play as much. So, all right, next up is Ronin. Straight to the bottom. Let's be completely honest. Straight to the bottom. Ronin is the reason I was really worried about Mad Titan Shadow, because Ronin, I think they could have done something really cool with Ronin. I think what they could have done is start him off at 11 difficulty, right? Just absurdly difficult. But as you work your way through Ronin, right, the curve kind of drops and he becomes like a 7 difficulty, right? It would have been a cool design that, like, okay, you have to really focus on getting things out there, building up really quick, fighting him. But as you keep fighting along, like, he naturally gets a little bit easier, not maybe a ton easier, but a little bit easier. And so you just have to like kind of outlast him, right? It could have been a cool difficulty build. Instead, they start him at 11 difficulty and they somehow put him up to a 12, right? Like they pushed down the throttle and really went for it. And it was one of those things that I thought they're running out of ideas to design. This was my big fear going to Mad Titan Shadow, that they're going to take Thanos and just make him a even higher difficulty. And then we're just going to have basically these super villains you have to rush. Now, luckily they didn't do that. Ronin, there's actually, I think I have a video from way back when, and like I want to kind of redo the video, that you can beat Ronin in 3 turns. You kind of have to. And they're like, Star-Lord can take him out in 3 turns, at least 50% of the time, probably higher. Because there is some exploits there. But overall, I mean, he's so limited in who you can fight against him. It's just not a fun scenario for solo gaming. I think we did it for multiplayer and it was better. It was more interesting. And he's definitely works better for multiplayer, but for solo, he's too much. And he's just not fun. It's a villain that just attacks really hard. And there's nothing truly unique about him. So he's down at the bottom. All right, next up we have Taskmaster, who I really enjoy. I'm gonna put him slightly above Crossbones, right in the middle. I think this Taskmaster is one of those villains I kind of always forget about, and I go, oh yeah, like he's fun. I like fighting against him. I think he's cool. You know, he's a solid villain. I'll pull him out now and again and play with him. I think it's neat. So I'm gonna put Taskmaster smack dab in the middle. He might get moved around a little bit. But to me, he is the most middle of the road villain out there. There's nothing super unique about him, but he's not bad either. He's what I expect from a generic villain that plays pretty well. So next up is Thanos, which again, my big concern with Thanos was that they were going to just make him super tough. Ronin 2.0. They didn't. They leaned into that whole snap, get rid of half your deck thing. I think that's brilliant. He's just beneath Red Skull. I think it's a brilliant way to play it. I think it's super fun and interesting. I'm a huge fan of Thanos in this game. We'll see how it keeps doing on subsequent plays. If that snap mechanic kind of gets old, it might. But I enjoy it still. I think it's fun, and it's pretty well balanced for solo, which is really impressive with him. Next up, this one looks a little weird, but it's Tower Defense. It's when you fight 2 villains, right? Proxima Midnight and the other one, whoever the other one is. Glaive, Gorgeous Glaive. I'm going to give it a C, a high C. The reason being is in solo, it seems like the tower as long as you work on um, the one main scheme that stops tower damage, you don't ever really have to worry about the tower. It doesn't really come into play that often. Now in multiplayer, it did for us. It was a much more interesting scenario in multiplayer. But for solo gaming, the tower doesn't really matter, and that's kind of the main hook. Really, is just fighting two villains at once, which you can just kind of balance out. Not too hard, to be completely honest. So I'm putting it down there. I feel like I've played it almost a dozen times now, and I'm kind of done with it, right? I don't really want to see it again. So I don't know. Not that big of a fan. Ultron. Ultron's up there. Ultron's so much fun. Ultron is so unique, and I think that's what will always keep Ultron up there. Is he is a specific villain in the sense of having to deal with his minions constantly over and over and over. I think that is kind of a interesting, unique mechanic. Not a lot of other villains have done anything close to that, so I really enjoy that about Ultron. I hope they kind of keep it that way, that he is super unique and will stay that way. I like that he's over the top tough, that you really have to build a really strong deck to beat him that can handle threat, that can handle minions, that can handle him, right? I love him as a villain. I think he's really, really cool. I think he's well balanced. I'm a big fan of Ultron. He's just, I don't play him as much as I should because I feel like my deck is never as good as it can be to take him on. But maybe in the future. All right, next up is Wrecking Crew. I think most people put this on the bottom. I'm actually putting it in C tier. I'll put it just below Rhino, but above Loki. I don't mind the Wrecking Crew. I think it's super unique that you're fighting four of them at once. I think it's cool. It's kind of easy, to be honest, once you figure out like the order in which you should attack them and deal with them. But yeah, I think it's fun. I think it could be fun playing the Wrecking Crew. I've never done it multiplayer. I really want to see if it's better. But as a solo game, like it's fine. I don't mind pulling out the Wrecking Crew now and again. Would I recommend people go out and buy it? Probably not for solo, unless you're just a completionist and really want it like me. But right now it's slightly above Loki, probably because I haven't done the Wrecking Crew in a long time, and I've done Loki a lot recently, so that might be why. But yeah, I think the Wrecking Crew is fine. I think it gets really harsh treatment from a lot of people because of when it came out and compared to how everything else was. But I like the design. I think it's unique. I think it's cool. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. It's not bottom tier. All right, the very last one, Zola. Zola, to me, is Taskmaster, but harder. And I like that. So I'm going to put slightly above Taskmaster. The Retaliate really messes you up. Obviously, if you get a ranged character, it's a bit easier. And it seems like there are more cards that give that option. But at the time, there weren't a ton of options for ranged characters and ranged cards. It's definitely becoming a bigger thing. So I think Zola is slowly getting easier. Back when this first came out, it was really tough though, because Zola, you had to really use your hero a lot, and you had to make sure your hero did big swings so the Retaliate didn't hurt you as much. So anyway, he's still middle of the pack. I need to get him and Taskmaster back out. The Rise of the Red Skull box, I feel like I've ignored that box for quite some time. I need to get back into those villains in general. Maybe that's a 2022 goal before Sinister Motives comes out. But yeah, that's my overall tier ranking. It's much more balanced than I thought it would be, which is interesting. I didn't think these rows would be as even as they are, but it's cool to see that. I'm for that. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you made it this far in the video. Let me know what you think about my tiers. If you agree, disagree, where you would put things, who your favorites are or least favorites are, especially for solo. And if you made this far, make sure to subscribe. I really appreciate it. It's free. It's easy. Just click that button from red to gray. And helps out this channel a lot. Helps me out a lot. And if you like videos like this, let me know. Let me know if I should be doing other tier ranking videos that you might be interested in. If so, drop it in the comments as well. All right. I appreciate it. Take care.